Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Folks, the case, of course, we're all the tragedy of Gene Hackman and his wife passing away. We're all sort of baffled by it, and baffled in a way that these type of cases occur all the time across the world, across New York City, across this great country of ours. And it's baffling because there are no obvious signs of how they died. You know, one of the first things, of course, you would look for is signs of blunt trauma, signs of stab wounds, gunshot wounds, none of those things. And also the amount of time that has passed since they passed away. And one indicator, a new indicator, is, and we'll speak about it more later on, is that Gene Hackman had a pacemaker. And apparently on the 17th of February, it stopped. So there was an indication there that could that be time of death for Mr. Hackman, the 17th. But how about his wife and the German Shepherd? That doesn't explain their deaths. And that is where the baffling part of this comes in. And all the different investigative checklists, of course, canvass of the location, canvass for video, speaking to the neighbors, a thorough search of the crime scene, a search warrant to process the crime scene, things that are collected, photographed, responsive crime scene unit, or whatever the counterpart is called in Santa Fe, New Mexico, response of medical legal investigators from the medical examiner's office to do an on-scene examination of the body. But still, here we are, March 1st, and we still don't know their causes of death. And you know something, for myself, for Professor Mike Geary, we understand this. Investigation takes time. Deciding or coming up with the manner of death and the cause of death in this case is up to science. And science is going to figure this out. But guess what? Science doesn't care that the media wants to know it yesterday. Science doesn't care about that. Science takes time. And a lot of these tests that will show or prove how they died and when they died, they take a while to come back. So folks, hold on to your seats, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your cup of coffee. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. Here I am, not the first time, not finding the copy, but I got it. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. We also have a brand new sponsor today, and I'm going to pull this up for you right now. And it has to do with a product called Mando. And Mando is a whole body deodorant product. The thing I like most about Mando body deodorant is that it lasts all day and leaves me feeling clean and fresh. Most deodorants stop working after a certain amount of time or under hot and steamy conditions. Mando fights the conditions and the odor from perspiration. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, Cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% of your starter pack. Use code POLICE, all in capitals, POLICE, at shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Ooh, I got through that one, Mike. Joining me today, I don't know if he uses Mando products. He certainly will after this show, is retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College, and attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill. Good afternoon. Good to see you. Thank you for having me on. I'm an Old Spice guy.
Oh, you're not supposed to say that. You say, "Oh no, I switched to Mando," because
I will switch.
That's right, because they back the show. Anyway, some new things we found out, and one of the interesting things is that, of course, we have found out that Gene Hackman's his pacemaker stopped on February 17th. So that is an indicator. I believe their bodies were found on the 27th, so
Yes.
that they were dead for approximately 10 days. But that still does not explain. That could explain that he had some type of cardiac event, but that doesn't explain the death of his wife, Betsy Arakawa, or the German Shepherd. And some of the things that leave us even more baffled is that from the preliminary autopsy, carbon monoxide poisoning has been eliminated. And how do they do that? Well, I would imagine, Mike, and I could be wrong, that's a blood test.
I would think.
And they eliminated that because when I was a little suspicious when on the scene they said, oh, there were no signs of carbon monoxide poisoning on the scene. But if this happened 2 weeks ago, would there be any signs of carbon monoxide in the air at that point? The other thing is the mummification of the bodies. And that is very strange. But then somewhat explained by Joseph Scott Morgan, and we'll hear from him later on, in that this is an arid type climate. And it's a different type of body decomposition than in some other areas that are more, there's more humidity in the air, and that causes a different type of decomposition. So the mummification of bodies and then the location of the bodies. I've talked long enough, Mike. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, as we're gathering more and more evidence, a little bit comes out each and every day. And we found out that Gene Hackman's pacemaker stopped on February 17th. And so that, as the county sheriff said, that would be a good indication that that was probably the day he passed, which would indicate that the manner of death was natural, probably heart condition, because he did have the pre-existing heart condition. So that would not be considered suspicious at all. But really what makes it strange is the fact that his wife, who's I think exactly 30 years younger than he is, she's in her early to mid 60s, and she's passed, and she's found in the bathroom. And the way that she's found indicates that there may have been some sort of excitement because the pills were open. It wasn't, and they were all over the floor. So that's the really difficult part about it, is we could say he was probably died from natural causes, but her death is the one that troubles me the most at this point, knowing what we know right now.
Bobby Chacon, a good friend of the show, good friend of mine, friend of yours.
Yeah.
Retired FBI agent, just a brilliant guy, another law degree, and he's a Long Island boy too. He grew up, I think, in East Islip, and he went to Hofstra University Law School. I think he was lucky enough to go to undergrad in Miami, Florida. So and then he joined the FBI, but he really is, to me, one of the best talking heads on TV, and he knows his shit. Some of these guys are bull artists. He knows his stuff. He worked for Brooklyn South, Brooklyn North Homicide with them, with the NYPD, and I have a lot of respect for him. I'm going to play. He was on News Nation, and let's listen to Bobby Chacon on News Nation.
Retired FBI agent and attorney Bobby Chacon. Bobby, what do you make of what we learned from this press conference that apparently Hackman's pacemaker shows his last movement to be on February 17th, and that both he and his wife tested negative for carbon monoxide?
Well, Elizabeth, it looks like they're trying to rule out certain things, like obviously the carbon monoxide now can be ruled out. And so you start with a bunch of things that could happen. You start ruling things out and you start focusing on the things that are remaining. I would want to know what type of pacemaker you had. My grandmother, for instance, had a pacemaker that only kicked on when her heart rate went too low and it just jumped in to restart her heart. So was this a pacemaker that kind of only went in when he was having a heart attack type of thing? So they're going to marry that data. So that's a crucial date now. Now we have February 17th is a crucial date. When they look at his cell phone records, has all of his cell phone activity stopped around that date? Does he normally text with friends, or does he search the internet things on his phone, and all of a sudden all of his cell phone data stops on February 17th? You have to marry that now with the one crucial date we have now. But it's a huge piece of evidence now, that date. And now we can start working towards that date to see if there's any other activity post that date. They'll look at his planner, that monthly planner, to see if he missed any meetings after the 17th of February.
They also collected.
Bobby Chacon is right on. And as a former homicide investigator myself, so many of the things what we would call the victimology. And it may very well come back at some point when all the science comes back, the results of the autopsy, the toxicology, that these were natural deaths. It very well, but it really presents suspiciously to everyone. And one of the things that has bothered many people is that, why was the door left ajar? Was there someone else in this location? I think that, when I spoke to some people, even in the chat, that are from Santa Fe, New Mexico, it's a very safe community. And this is a gated community. Some people sometimes in these gated, safe communities will leave their door open. They don't think twice about it. Could that be the case? But as an investigator, yes, you have to take note of that. You have to be concerned with that. But then we also would look at the bodies. Was there any sign of blunt trauma? Was there any sign of a stab wound, a gunshot wound? The medical legal investigators that respond after the Santa Fe crime scene unit, they do an examination on the scene of the body to look for those very things that I just mentioned. And then, of course, we go to secondarily things like a canvas of the whole house. Let's see if there's any signs of forced entry or any of the rooms ransacked. Is there any valuables missing? And then we have to do what's called the financial. And for that, you need subpoenas. You subpoena Mr. Hackman's bank records. And Bobby Chacon hit it on the head too. His cell phone, his computer, all of those things, again, they can take time also. But huge investigative steps. And from the police perspective, the other part of this investigation, probably the most important part of this investigation right now, is the scientific part of this investigation, which will come from the medical examiner. Of course, the toxicology, which can take anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks to come back. So everyone, of course, wants it yesterday, but guess what? It's going to take a little bit of time, Mike.
Yeah, Bill, there's been so many little tidbits of information we're getting just leaking out, coming from the county sheriff having a photo ops, interviews with the press. One of the things that troubled me was that the early reporting was that the door was open, it was unlocked and it was open. And when I read another article that Jesse Keller, the contractor who actually went to the house, when he called 911, he said he could see through the window the two bodies, yet he said the house was secured. So I'm wondering, there was an inconsistency there. He also then called security. Maybe security then opened up the door before the police got there and left the door ajar for the police. So there's a little inconsistency, and these little inconsistencies sometimes add up to a lot of confusion. But I'd really want to know about that door was it actually closed and locked, or did someone, like with the security key, open it and do that? So that's an inconsistency there that should be cleared up. You're right. If there's nothing missing from inside the house, it doesn't even look like a drawer was left open or anything like that, then you kind of wonder, okay, we can accept very easily a 95-year-old man with a pacemaker, dying. Okay. But having two people in the same area, in the same house, die without any sort of evidence of a violent struggle where there's, defensive wounds, there's blood under the fingernails, there's a ripped shirt, signs of a struggle. We don't have anything like that so far. So that's the hard part, is determining what is the mystery is her death more so than his. She may have gone into the bathroom to get pills for him. Maybe, there's no indication that she banged her head or anything like that. There's no outward trauma. So that is the difficult part of this case for me, is how do you get two people dying so close together, and one is 64 and the other, or 65, and the other one is 95. Very strange.
From the chat, Kung Fu Panda, the dog found in the bathroom closet is notable. Kung Fu Panda, I agree. However, there's some inconsistencies with that too. Was the dog locked in a kennel type cage or box where he was unable to get out? It seems what occurred. And the news has been reporting that. So if the dog was unable to get out of whatever they had him in, a kennel or a box, then it would make sense, because the dog could have been locked up for 10 or more days and he could have died from, dehydration or any type of natural cause. And we still don't know, vis-a-vis Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy, whether or not they died of natural causes. We still have to wait, but we're discussing some of the potential reasons why there should and there is suspicion. Let me go back to Bobby Chacon here.
2 green cell phones. And by the way, the bottles of medication that they collected, they're over the counter. They're pretty mild. It's nothing like, no barbiturates, no opioids, nothing like that. So it seems to roll out any sort of an overdose, right?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, and it's unusual, because you would think somebody at 95 years old took more medications than that. I mean, my mom has a pill box that she takes morning and night that have a lot of medications in it, and she's only 85. So I think you would think that a man 95 would have had more medications around the house, and if they would have taken all of them, not just focusing on these 3, but they may have been the ones that were scattered on the shelf or the countertop where his wife's body was found. That's what I'm thinking, because there had to have been more medications, even over the counter stuff, in that house.
Yeah, but still, if it was some sort of a heart event that Gene Hackman suffered and died from on February 17th, it still doesn't explain the death of his wife, who was 30 years younger, and the family German Shepherd, who was in a crate, apparently, and unable to get outside the home. The 2 other German Shepherds were alive and well, but they were running around outside.
That's right. And well, it's exceedingly rare to have 2 natural cause deaths in the same house at the same time, which is apparently what might have happened here. Or if he was falling and she was trying to help him from falling, or trying to help him to get up, and then had her own cardiac event, and then went to try to take her own pills, that could be an explanation. But the pills that we find scattered don't apparently seem to be heart medication. So that could be, if he's falling down and she tries to help him up, and then she has her own event because of the trauma of what's happening to her husband, then that could happen. But you have to understand how exceedingly rare 2 natural cause deaths are in the same house around the same time.
And the family dog. And by the way, she's 30 years younger. I don't know that, she would have
It's very odd. And the dog, if the dog tells me it was unexpected. They wouldn't have left the dog in there knowing, they were going to die. So the dog probably was in there as a matter of course, and maybe they let them out for dinner or whatever, that particular dog. And so it tells me that this was kind of a surprise to them. The dog was probably a unfortunate consequence of them not being able to release that dog, and likely died of dehydration.
So if they
So, folks that were asking about the dog before, there's an explanation that Bobby Chacon gave that I surmised, is that the dog was unable to get out. The dog was locked in some kind of box, some kind of kennel by his owners. And that's why the dog died, perhaps, as Bobby Chacon suggested, from dehydration. So now we have sort of an explanation for the dog, but we still don't have, Mr. Hackman, 95 years old, you can die at any time. You're 95 years old, and he could have many, many natural causes that causes death. But the inexplicable thing is that two people dying at the same time of natural causes is a bit unusual, Mike.
Yeah, I was looking at the chat, and Naomi suggested that maybe it was a staged scene where there was some sort of criminal act and then an assault or perhaps a murder, and it was staged. I've thought about that earlier before we went on the air, and I was thinking it's a possibility, except for the fact that anybody who would have done that would have probably had to come in through the front of a gated community, and I'm sure there's security cameras there. And there may be a security guard with a logbook where you have to show your ID, and they'd log you in. So I'm not thinking that it's a staged scene. I don't think that somebody went into that house unobserved and did some harm to both Mr. Hackman and his wife, and then got out unseen. So I think that's probably didn't happen. But there's probably a very unsurprising, perhaps, answer to this really weird question is how two people could seemingly die of natural causes, in the same house, feet from each other, probably around the same time. So we'll find out. It'll take a couple of weeks, but it's probably something that isn't very inexplicable. That there is some sort of sensible answer to it. We just don't see it right now. But I don't think they were the victim of a crime. But Naomi, thank you very much. That was a really good observation.
On the NYPD, they would call this a cuppy, and what that stands for is circumstances undetermined pending police investigation, and that's the term cuppy. And the medical examiner, if they couldn't find out the manner or the cause of death, they would kick it back to the investigators. A lot of good questions coming from the chat. Well, yeah, there must be video cameras on this property. This is no, inexpensive home. This is probably a $3-4 million home. It looks huge from when they showed the aerial photos of it. It's a complex that's gated. So the chances that there's video cameras is almost 100% that there would be video cameras, and potentially video cameras on the house, very likely. So they could spot who was coming and going. So that's all part of this investigation. But I think the bigger part of this investigation, of course, is the science part of this investigation, and the results of, the autopsies probably have been completed, but not all the tests that come with the autopsy. The tissue tests, the blood tests, all of those take time, as well as what everyone would be waiting for in a situation like this would be the toxicology, Mike.
Yeah, Bill. And one of the problems is, as you've probably experienced this before, is when somebody's passed away for more than a day or two, is will you get an accurate toxicology test from whatever fluids are remaining inside the body? Because there's going to be a deterioration of all the tissue, the blood, and everything else. So that's going to be very difficult. We hope we can get the police can get a good toxicology test that will be accurate, but we don't know. But that's the hardest part. Is they were, Mr. Hackman was dead for about a week and a half, and so maybe his wife also was dead right around the same time, and so that makes it really difficult to really get an accurate test. We hope they do, but it's going to be but we're not going to find out, unfortunately, for at least 6 weeks.
Absolutely. Carly from the chat, deltiazem was found and can be dangerous, causes hypertension and stops your heart. Carly, all of those things are possibilities, and thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. Yes, we don't know yet, and that'll be from the toxicology. Hopefully, we will find out what caused Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, his wife, her death. Go back to Bobby Chacon here.
Have ruled out carbon monoxide. Is there anything else? I mean, the gas company, the fire department has come and said there doesn't seem to be a gas leak either. Is there any other environmental cause that would kill two people and a dog like this?
Not that I'm aware of. And those are the two main ones, the gas leak, which, by the way, the fire department went in first because, before the crime scene team could operate in there, they had to rule out that kind of thing. Right. So they right away, they said no gas leak, no carbon monoxide. So I don't know of any other environmental contaminant that would have caught anything else would have been obvious. Any poisons, any things like that they would have contacted with, and like if they were both eating the same food that was contaminated or something like that would have been more obvious. But any other kind of environmental contaminant would be obvious, other than the two that you mentioned.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to join
That's interesting. You know, some of you guys in the chat are putting up some interesting little tidbits. Karen Phillips, the one medication was a heart blood pressure medication. American Aussie, it also doesn't explain why the other two dogs were okay and why the hands of Gene and his wife were mummified. It takes at least 8 weeks. I don't think that's true, American Aussie. I don't think it takes 8 weeks to become mummified. And especially in an arid climate like Santa Fe, New Mexico. I think Joseph Scott Morgan, who is a well-known death investigator, and we'll put him on a little bit later, he spoke how that could happen more quickly in an arid climate like Santa Fe, New Mexico. But thank you for your comments. As per the dogs that survived, they were able to come and go outside the house. Maybe they found some water source outside the house. Maybe they found some food because they were able to move around the house. The other dog was locked in like a kennel or a box. So that explains it. But the other two dogs, you know, how long could a dog survive if he had access even to water and no food? At least that would prolong your life also, I would imagine. And perhaps because they were able to go outside, maybe they were able to obtain some food, even kill a rabbit or something or a squirrel. So that's a possibility. So it's, a lot of things are tough to explain, but that's why they call it investigation. Nothing about this is easy. There's nothing about this that we should go, oh, yes, this is what happened. And even all the experts are not taking a dive into that. Oh, this is what occurred. We know for sure. No, because they have to await the test. They have to wait for the toxicology to come back. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, share us with your friends and your family. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And we appreciate all our fans, our friends, and our YouTube family that support this show on YouTube and Patreon. It helps to keep this show going. I'm going to play Joseph Scott Morgan right now, a very learned death investigator. He's all over YouTube. He's really a go-to guy with a lot of the stuff as a talking head, even on a lot of these shows. Here he is up on the screen with CNN.
For being here. So I want to start with, no external trauma, no immediate signs of foul play, at least according to preliminary autopsies. I mean, what sticks out to you of all the details we know so far?
That this is a multiple death scenario. This is not common, particularly, I worked for the ME in Atlanta and for the coroner in the New Orleans area. And Omar, I got to tell you, in my recollection, I've never worked a case with multiple deaths in a single structure that weren't either trauma related or there was some type of toxin in the air or it was something that had been ingested. And then on top of it, we have this dead canine as well that was found adjacent to her in the bathroom. And for me, you're going to have to dig deep and take your time with this case because, in my opinion, this is very, very complex.
And, the Santa Fe County Sheriff, as we just mentioned, said it appears to have been days, potentially even up to a couple of weeks before they were found. And the affidavit said there were signs of mummification on the bodies. What does that mean? And how does a body that may have gone many days before being found change the nature of a death investigation?
Well, yeah. So to that point, it makes it a bit more complex because a lot of the things that would be obvious as far as trauma goes, initially, particularly at the scene where you've got poor lighting and those sorts of things, you might not pick up on it as quickly. It's going to be to their advantage, and they've done that. That's probably occurring today. those bodies are actually at the ME's office under the best type of circumstances to examine remains. Secondly, I begin to think about what they're going to be tasked with relative to kind of running down those things that are unseen. It's my opinion that they should do a very broad spectrum toxicology report. And this issue of carbon monoxide inhalation perhaps has come up time and time again. They're going to do a carboxyhemoglobin level on all parties concerned here. And in addition to having autopsies performed, which should involve head to toe, full body x-rays, they're going to do a necropsy, hopefully, on this canine that is deceased. To the point of mummification, though, we have to understand that Santa Fe, New Mexico is a very arid environment, and you only get mummification most of the time in very arid environments where you're absent any kind of significant humidity. And plus you're in the winter months now too. It makes it particularly dry in that environment. So there's a lot going on here. Reflectively, I'm thinking about these medications that were found scattered upon the vanity in the bathroom, this toppled heater. And Omar, one of the most troubling things about this is that this house was not secured. The door was actually open. And for me, as a death investigator, that's significant. And hopefully
he is 100% right. That is concerning to any investigator, that the door was ajar. There was no sign of forced entry, however. So as I said, could that be a lifestyle thing? Could Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, just felt so safe and so secure in their home, and it was a gated community, that they, in fact, and because they had 3 dogs, could they have just felt safe in leaving their door open? That is a possibility. And look, I've been to hundreds and hundreds of homicide scenes, and that is one of the things, of course, we check right away. Is there any signs of forced entry? How did the perpetrator or perpetrators get in? But then after you look at the door being ajar or the door being open, now you look at other factors. And the factors, and I'm not teaching anything to this esteemed death investigator, you look at the body. And is there any signs of blunt traumas, any signs of stab wounds, gunshot wounds? And the answer to that is no. So then you have to say, does it still concern you that the door was ajar? Or is that how they lived their life? Mike?
Yeah, Bill, as they're in a gated community and they're very private people, and they have the dogs, they may have felt very secure to sit there and have the door open. Like on a summer day, you just have the screen door open. It's not locked. If you have a dog, you figure a dog will hear a lot better than you. So if anybody comes anywhere near the house, the dogs will bark. And so therefore you'll be alarmed. So yeah, they probably felt very, very safe. And so it could be that when the maintenance worker called and he said he couldn't get in, perhaps he went to a different door that may have been locked, like a side door or something like that, whatever it happened to be. So, it's one of those little issues that drives me crazy. You always want to nail that down. But I was thinking, and Anna Lizette in the chat thought about poison. Is it possible a meal that they had, sometime earlier, like the night before, or that morning, may have caused them to die from the same sort of ingestion of a poison? That's a possibility. And of course, that's something I'm sure the medical examiner is looking at, if you could get some sort of reading from the contents of their stomachs. But, that's another possibility. So we don't know. Someone else even said in the chat, how about mold? And of course, you always have to think about that too. But there's a number of cases. Now, we know Mr. Hackman, his pacemaker stopped on February 17th, but what caused his pacemaker to stop? Was it a heart attack caused by the ingestion of poison? We're not sure. So there's a number of factors that we still have to wait for. Unfortunately, we do have to wait for a long time.
Absolutely. Brooklyn Pasola from the chat. I'm a mortician, 23 years. It's not mummification like what we think with mummies from Egypt. It's actually mold spores that spread like spider webs across the skin. Brooklyn Pasola, thank you for that.
Okay.
I have seen bodies that have been mummified. It's not that common, but I have seen it. You know, as far as the poisoning, Mike, I think there are outward signs to the skin and the mouth,
Right.
the discoloration that would be indicative of some type of poisons. And most food poisoning doesn't kill you. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
it makes you really sick, you know. So look, again, we can all conjecture, but it's going to be science that is going to solve this case.
It will be exploring that very, very deeply.
A lot of factors to explore right now, just in the preliminary stages. As you know, these investigations typically take time. Joseph Scott Morgan, really appreciate you being here. Thanks for the time and perspective.
He's just an outstanding academic. He's an outstanding depth investigator. He's been all over YouTube on a number of cases, and he's one of the most respected guys that you could see from YouTube. So we're still at sort of square one, right? Except we did find out in the last 24 hours in regards to Mr. Hackman's pacemaker, which gives them a time frame. But some better or other, I shouldn't say better, that's probably one of the best time frames you could have, is that the pacemaker stopped. But the cell phones, so important. When was the last time they spoke on the cell phone? When was the last time the cell phone was activated? All of those things, we know we all live and die with this stupid thing in our hand, right? And everything you do practically revolves around this in some way. And you know, in a lot of ways, in criminal investigation, it's been a treasure trove of information for law enforcement and for investigators, both in homicides and all kinds of other cases, because it does give you a timestamp. And, you know, someone also said in the chat before that the Hackmans, Mr. Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, didn't have video, which is unheard of. They live in almost a $4 million house, but because they don't have video, does the complex have video? And do some of their neighbors have video? I mean, I know here, I'm in Florida, and I can check my house from Florida, my New York house, and look at my driveway 24/7. Oh, what's that guy doing in my driveway? Right. You know, and it sort of gives you a little confidence that it's another level of security to have that. But some people, and that's their business, they would rather have privacy over security. Mike.
Yeah, they're a very, very private couple. They're known to be, you know, stay to themselves, and they raise, I think they take in rescue dogs, and they're good neighbors, but they don't travel a lot. And we do know that from what we've heard is that Mr. Hackman hasn't spoken to his one of his daughters, at least, in several months. So there's not a lot of activity coming in and coming out. So you're right. If there's somebody with a Ring doorbell camera facing them, but I'm not even sure, looking at that, the pictures we could see of the outside of the house, would that even be helpful? But you're right. Only probably the best video would be from whatever is there at a gate or something like that, that the homestead area provides. But other than that, it makes it really difficult to, because they're not social butterflies, they're not going in and out all the time. It makes it very difficult to figure out, okay, who could possibly have access to them, because it's very, very, very limited. And as you say, when was the last time they sent an email, text message? When was the last time they posted anything online, and that sort of thing? But it makes it very difficult. And you're right. At this point, we know a little just to give us a broad context of the crime scene, but we don't know a lot of the small, facets of the little details. We'll get that in a couple of weeks, but it's hard not to speculate, because there are a number of variables that we don't know about yet, in terms like the weather, in terms about food, the terms about what they may have drank, the terms Mrs. Arakawa, her health, because we do know he's 95 and had health issues, but we haven't nothing so far about her health issues. So this is all kind of things that's going to be determined probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Absolutely. From the chat, Marie Antoinette, great comment. Big house, mansion, 2 elderly people, no housekeepers, other staff. Marie, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Did they have help? I mean, who could have a house that size? One elderly man, 95, and his wife is 63, I believe. I incorrectly said she was 65 yesterday. That was what was reported. So a huge house. Do you think she was cleaning the house and taking care of them? That's, they must have had staff, to clean that house, to take care of that house. The people that found them apparently was an exterminator who was working on the house, and he saw something that he didn't like. And he called security, and he may even have seen the body or the bodies. And he called the security, and then they called the police. So Marie Antoinette, you're so 100% correct. Right. And as Mike, when Mike brought it up before, I was like, "Why are you bringing it up? You're taking my, you're taking my thoughts." Both of their health. What was Betsy Arakawa's health? Did she have heart problems? Was she taking that drug deltiazem is for, it's a heart drug. Was that Mr. Hackman's or was that Betsy Arakawa's? We don't know that. So these are some of the things that come in when we preach to you guys about victimology, the study of the victim or complete backgrounding on the victim. The detectives, the investigators, they want to know everything possible about these victims so they can look down that road, And I mentioned earlier, yes, financials. Even Mr. Hackman's will, for example.
Right.
Who were his beneficiaries? How did the family get along with him? How did the family get along with each other? All of these things are necessary. And you might say, well, you have to find out all of these things because they may come into play. I'm going to play this from News Nation.
Surrounding the death of acting legend Gene Hackman, his wife, and one of their dogs. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office revealing the couple may have been dead for up to 9 days before being found. The 95-year-old actor and his wife were discovered by a maintenance worker in their New Mexico home. News Nation's Caitlin Becker has been following the story since it broke. Caitlin, this is just heartbreaking. What more do we know about this very mysterious case?
Mysterious is the word for it, Hannah. The places the bodies were found, the states the bodies were found in makes no sense. In addition, one of their dogs passed away, but 2 of their dogs were alive. Initially, everyone's first reaction, you see 2 people in 2 different spots in the house and the dog. The assumption is maybe a gas leak or carbon monoxide poisoning. However, investigators say that is not the case. Take a look.
She revealed to me the following information. Both individuals tested negative for carbon monoxide. An initial interrogation was conducted of Mr. Hackman's pacemaker. This revealed that his last event was recorded on February 17th, 2025. According to the pathologist, I think that is a very good assumption that was his last day of life.
So that last bit there, very key. February 17th was the last recorded event on his pacemaker. That is when they were assuming Hackman died. We still don't have a time of death for his wife, but look at the timeline here. You see 17 was the last recorded thing of the pacemaker. And then as you continue down, not a lot happened there. However, a 911 call came in. There are some questions about that. Investigators had initially said, or we had heard rumors, that the door was open and that the maintenance worker was able to get inside. But if you listen to the 911 call, the maintenance worker says that he sees bodies but can't get inside because the home is locked. So a lot of mysteries here. The state the bodies were found and the state of decomposition is also very curious. From what the police report says, there was mummification of the hands and feet on Hackman's wife, who was found on the bathroom floor. There were pills scattered around, and they weren't they weren't things like benzo, something that you would expect for a self-inflicted condition. It was Tylenol, thyroid medication, and heart medication. Those were scattered around, but she was also found on the ground near a space heater. Unclear if that space heater was on, but if you hear something like mummification, I know it sounds wild, but it's not uncommon in cases like these. It's when the body kind of dries out. So if that space heater was on, it might be a reason for why she had the mummification of the hands and feet, Hannah.
That explains. Thank you. I did not understand the mummification aspect, so that actually makes sense. What comes next now, Caitlin?
Well, a lot of items were taken from the house, like cell phones, pill bottles, etc. But I think the main thing we're looking at here, Hannah, is the autopsy. The autopsy, the toxicology we're looking for as well, but there are no signs of CO2 in the body. So toxicology, but autopsy. We want to know time of death, who died first, when they died, and what was the ultimate cause of death. That will answer a lot of questions.
All right, Caitlin Becker, such a sad story. Thank you again.
So, again, some of the same things that we've been saying. Body blow biscuit butter. Thank you for the $4.99 super sticker. This may sound crazy, but any thoughts on a possible solar flare causing heart attacks in both people? Body blow biscuit butter. I have no idea what that is. I have to admit that. Mike, do you have any clue?
A solar flare? I think that's something almost like an eclipse or something, or some sort of behavior by the sun to let off extra energy. Not exactly sure. You got me.
I mean, I can't really answer that with my ignorance toward it. But well, thank you for the $4.99 super sticker. So again, all of the different investigative things that the detectives do, and of course, the detectives that responded to the scene are constantly interacting with the medical examiner's office. In fact, for the NYPD, a detective was required to attend the autopsy in a suspicious death, a homicide or a suspicious death. And they would actually watch the autopsy and they would ask questions, and the medical examiner would interact with the detective during the autopsy. So post-autopsy, the detectives will still stay in contact with the medical examiner's office and again, ask questions, find out anything. And of course, it was saying it's sort of ad nauseum. What about the toxicology? And we're going to still be talking about that tomorrow and the next day and the next day after that, because it can take 6 to 8 weeks to come back. And right now, this case would be classified as undetermined. When we talk about manner of death, and again, maybe we learned something. And yesterday, I think I was mixing it up. Manner of death, homicide, suicide, accidental, natural, and undetermined. So there's 5 manners of death. And then cause of death, this is where you mix up manner and cause. Cause could be gunshot wound, stab wound, could be heart attack, could be poisoning, could be any of those things. So you could see we can mix the two up and it can get confusing. But this right now is classified as undetermined. But everyone, of course, in the news, everyone in the police services, we all want to know what the hell happened to one of my favorite actors on this earth, right?
Right.
And, I always think about it, and even one of Phil Grimaldi told me that one of the reasons he became a detective was because of the movie French Connection. He was so inspired by Gene Hackman in that movie. And if you haven't seen, I saw that. I think that movie came out in 1971.
Yes.
So I don't know if you watched it now, if it would be dated and you'd be like, oh, this is so corny. Because when I watched the movie Serpico with Al Pacino a couple of years ago, I was like, this is so corny. It was really corny, because it was dated. But I wonder if the same thing is true with the French Connection, Mike.
Yeah, Billy, if anybody hasn't seen the French Connection yet, you got to see it. Yeah, it's the car chase is just unbelievable. Back then, Hollywood was putting together some amazing car chase movies, and that was one of them. So you should watch the movie if you can. You could appreciate, and you got to listen to the New York dialogue. It was really fantastic. I haven't seen it in probably 10 years. So, but I will watch it again just because Gene Hackman was fantastic.
Yeah, in honor of Gene Hackman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terry Ellis from the chat. I do believe because the other dogs could come and go that they were able to at least eat grass or find a puddle to drink from, maybe a dripping faucet.
Yeah.
Terry Ellis, I think you're right. Brooklyn Paizola. It's very common for families to reject initial causes of death, like overdose or something uncomfortable for them. They ask for carbon monoxide testing all the time. It's the easiest to digest. Yeah, I think you're right. American Aussie, maybe someone else locked the dog in the closet. Maybe there is foul play. They had 2 dogs found alive outside. American Aussie, everyone would think that, and I would think that too, except for the fact that there's no signs of how the bodies died. And if this was a home invasion or a robbery or a burglary, most likely they would have died from blunt trauma, stab wound, gunshot wound, something like that, or asphyxia, strangulation, because after all, they're elderly. Mr. Hackman's elderly. So I don't think you can say that. And that's why. That's my reasons why. I think that the dogs were probably, or the dog was probably locked in his kennel by the owners, and they didn't expect to die. And the poor dog was locked in there without water and food, and he died too, you know? So yeah, I'm not thinking that, but let's see what else. I'm looking for Janine Dove. She could have opened the door for the dogs to go in and out. Been a busy morning, and they have something happen, and the door was never closed. Janine, also they're saying that there was like a dog thing. You know how people have entrances for their
Doggy doors.
Yeah,
right?
doggy doors.
Yeah.
They had the doggy doors in this house. So yeah, some things, we can ask all these questions, but the answers to these questions, you really need to do a canvas of the house like the detectives did, and some of your questions would be answered. Michael Bass from the chat. At Forbidden Planet, same here in KCMO, I was thinking the same. I was thinking Carol Grayson was in the UK. Perhaps she is a great mod. And chat boss, Michael Bass, I didn't know what you were going to say before I read it, but yes, Carol Grayson is she's a great moderator. We really appreciate everything she does. And so is Kim Alliston, 2 fantastic moderators. Eyes on Heaven, did the door have a screen door over it? If not, I do not think left open on purpose. Bugs. Again, Eyes on Heaven, I wasn't at the location, and I can answer all those questions if I was. The other thing is a location like this, the crime scene unit should have videotaped the entire location, photographed, videotaped, so we would be able to answer some of those questions. Carly from the chat, dry climate also means you dehydrate fast, so the dog wouldn't have a chance unless the caretaker found soon after. Carly, thank you for those comments. You're 100% right. I'm going to play this from ABC.
Of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife 3 days after their bodies were found in their New Mexico home. Investigators say tests show that no sign of carbon monoxide poisoning was there, but they're waiting for more test results. ABC's Melissa Adon is in Los Angeles with the latest now. Good morning, Melissa.
Gio, good morning. So Gene Hackman and his wife's deaths still remain a mystery. This as investigators are just trying to get their hands on any new information so they can put together a timeline of the couple's last known whereabouts.
This morning, as authorities intensify the investigation into the deaths of legendary actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa, one potential cause in their suspicious deaths remains a question.
Both individuals tested negative for carbon monoxide. The manner and cause of death has not been determined.
Police trying to zero in on exactly when the couple may have died, saying Hackman's pacemaker registered its last recorded event on February 17th.
I think that is a very good assumption that was his last day of life. I was advised that a more thorough investigation will be completed.
The 95-year-old actor found on Wednesday in his Santa Fe home after a caretaker called 911.
No, dude, they're not moving. Just send somebody out here really quick.
Investigators say they found Hackman in the mudroom, appearing to have suddenly fallen. His wife on the bathroom floor with a space heater near her head and an opened orange prescription bottle with pills scattered on the countertop. Nearby, one of their dogs found deceased in a crate. Investigators saying they retrieved several items from the home, including thyroid medication diltiazem, which can be used to treat high blood pressure, heart rhythm issues, chest pain, among other reasons. They also found 2 cell phones, a 2025 monthly planner, and records from MyQuest, a medical diagnostic service.
There are different rooms of the house. They're fully dressed, and you also have a deceased dog. So that certainly would suggest something that was shared between the 3 of them potentially that took their lives.
Now, investigators are working to establish when.
Not necessarily. I don't really agree with that guy most of the time.
The notoriously private couple last made contact with anyone.
It's really key to do basically a timeline of at least 48 hours before they died to see if there's any information in there.
Investigators are still waiting for several key results to come in, including cell phone data that'll show who the couple last interacted with. And then, of course, the toxicology and the autopsy report, which Janae will hopefully provide investigators some answers. Janae?
As there are still so many unanswered questions, Melissa, thank you.
So, I love the news when about all their unanswered questions, because guess what? If the questions are unanswered to the police right now, of course they're going to be unanswered to you. And when the police get some answers to these questions, they'll give it to you. And as I mentioned, these are called, in New York City, they're called CUPPIs, circumstances undetermined pending police investigation. So that's what we have here right now. And what we have here is 2, 3 possible, but except the dog doesn't get seen the same way as human beings, 2 undetermined deaths, undetermined as to how they died. From the chat, the Thoris, member for 13 months of the Police Off the Cuff family. Thank you so much. I'm proud to be a member. Thank you so much. No, thank you for being a member. We really appreciate that. Hail Mary from the chat. Gene Hackman left this world with an interesting story, just like his acting life. 100% fantastic. A great American. He was a U.S. Marine. Did you know that? And he supposedly joined the Marines when he was 16. He lied about his age to get into the Marine Corps. So, if you ask anyone if there's any Marines in the audience, you never say you're a former Marine, because it's once a Marine, always a Marine. Once you obtain that title, United States Marine, you're a Marine. And they take great pride in saying that also, which as they should. They went through hell to obtain that title, and Gene Hackman was one, the few, the proud, the Marines, right?
Right.
Brooklyn Payzola from the chat. I would surmise if something happened to him, naturally she would have grabbed the phone to call for help. I don't know this ever happens unless there's a record of it. What happened in between time? Brooklyn Payzola, that's a great, that begs the question of who died first. If one died first, wouldn't the other have picked up the phone and called 911? Very good question. So we don't know. And is there a freaky chance that they both died at the same time? Or were at least incapacitated at the same time? So that's why some of the questions that you guys have, no one has answers to yet. But very, 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 very interesting questions. And hopefully we will get the answers to these questions as the autopsy results comes in and the toxicology. Mike, even though this was a really entertaining show, even for me to do, and I'm sure for you to do, it's time to say goodbye. And I want to give you your last thoughts, Mike.
Bill, it is intriguing, and the sad part is we don't know, and everybody, because Gene Hackman was a beloved American actor, one of the best there is. It just makes the tragedy so much more, and his poor wife passing away too. There may be a very simple explanation at the end. It's going to take a while to get all the test results back. Let's hope that there is a clear indication. And that we will have some sort of press conference or some sort of announcement from the ME's office and the sheriff's office down in Santa Fe of what the final results are, and that they satisfy everybody. But in the meantime, we should also, say a prayer for Mr. Hackman and Mrs. Arakawa and her family too, because they seem to be a great couple, and from what everybody has written in the papers, that they were fabulous neighbors. So, just be patient, like everything else. Just be patient. Hopefully, we'll get the final answers in about 6 weeks.
Well said, Mike. Lucky, I'm feeling he was in trouble. She ran to get pills, and something happened with her, either an event of her own or slipping. Just doesn't make sense, unless they were caught off guard by someone. Lucky, I think that's a astute assessment. It could be. I'm not saying it is. It's a could be. We mentioned that, and just as we all honor the life of Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa, there was a line in the French Connection. And I remember I saw that movie. It was 1971, and he was chasing the French guy through the subways, and he sort of thought that the French guy, they called him the Frog. It was this big heroin deal that he was like going to make him. He was saying, he knows he's the police. And Gene Hackman, the phone rang in the subway, and he picked it up and he goes, I don't care how many bartenders are out sick. I ain't working that joint. And I just so loved that line. I used to say it to people throughout my whole life. And they say, what are you doing? I go, I don't care how many bartenders are out sick. I ain't working that joint. And they were like, oh, you got to stop saying that. Anyway, that's my memories of the great, great actor, Gene Hackman. Let's hope they will find out what happened here. The investigators from the Santa Fe, New Mexico Sheriff's Department. And when they do, we will definitely report it to you. I want to thank everyone. I see a lot of new faces, a lot of new names in the chat. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless, and we'll see you the next time.
One episode just ain't enough.